Good morning, Saturday School.
Good morning.
Today we're going to be talking about Moses and the Exodus. You don't know who Moses is?
Moses.
Okay.
I know Moses.
You know Moses. Okay. We'll talk about Moses.
I know Moses.
After that, you'll know.
I know Moses, who
Okay.
Moses is, but I don't know who the Exodus is.
Right.
So we are talking about Moses.
So Exodus is the book, the second book of the Bible in the Old Testament that talked about how God rescued the children of Israel from Egypt, from slavery, and God brought them to the promised land.
I know the story now that you told me and this was on it.
Okay. So, but the word Exodus, the literal meaning of that word Exodus means the road out. It's a Greek word, so it means the road out. So, which means the journey, right, from Egypt, from slavery in Egypt to the promised land. This story covered the whole part of book of Exodus, which is about 40 chapters. What I've done is I've taken snapshots of key highlights of different chapters, and that's what I'm going to read. The first part is the oppression of Egypt in the first chapter of Exodus. So the story begins with the Israelites living in Egypt after Joseph's time. You remember Joseph? We've covered the story of Joseph.
Yeah.
You remember Joseph? Joseph, the son of Jacob.
Yeah.
And his brother sold him to slavery.
Yeah.
Okay. So all this happened.
I think he has 11 brothers.
11 brothers, yes. So this book of Exodus started after Joseph had ruled over Egypt. So after the 7 years of famine, where Joseph stored a lot of food for all the people of the world then, and a lot of people came.
That was starving.
Yes, a lot of people came to Egypt to buy food because Joseph stored a lot of food for the famine time. So this Exodus started after that because remember,
What is store?
store when you put something away. So we have that cupboard there. What do we keep in there? Food. Okay, so it's the same concept where Joseph built a massive buildings, and they were just putting food in it, so that when they had plenty, they stored a lot of food away, so that when they didn't have any during the famine period, they were then able to open up the storehouse and they were bringing food out and selling to people. Remember, Joseph brought his family from where they were. Joseph brought his family from where they were living before, after his brothers sold him into Egypt, and he became the prime minister of Egypt. He brought his father and his family back to Egypt, and they lived in the land called Goshen in Egypt, right? So Joseph died, the Pharaoh at that time died, and the next Pharaoh of Egypt, right, at this time of the Exodus, didn't like the children of Israelites. So he punished them by making them slaves. Over time, the Pharaoh became fearful of their growing numbers and enslaved them, subjecting them to harsh labor and oppression. Then the second chapter of Exodus, we saw the birth and early life of Moses. So Moses is born to a Levite family during this time of oppression. To save him from Pharaoh's decree to kill an Hebrew male infant, his mother places him in a basket and set it afloat in the Nile River. He is discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, who raises him in the palace as her own. So in the first chapter, we saw that Pharaoh, the new Pharaoh, was scared because the children of Israel were growing in number. They were having lots of kids and their number was growing. So he didn't like that. So he thought that if they grow bigger and bigger and they're like very, very, too many for the Egyptians, then they can overcome Egypt one day, or they can go to Egypt's enemies and try to overthrow Egypt. So because of that, it put them into slavery and made them work for him. Then in the second part, that was when, because of the growth in population, Pharaoh said that every male child that was born has to be killed. Some people didn't actually do that. So Moses' mother and father, when Moses was born, they hid Moses in a basket and they put him on a river and just praying that, God will save him. Moses was found by Pharaoh's daughter, and Pharaoh's daughter took Moses as her own child and started raising Moses in the palace. So Moses, from being an Israelite that was a slave in Egypt, born to a slave, an Israelite, became the son of Pharaoh's daughter and living in the palace. Third Exodus, chapter of Exodus, Moses had a call from God. So as a young man, Moses kills an Egyptian who was mistreating a Hebrew slave. So Hebrew is the same thing for Israelites. And flees into the wilderness. There at Mount Horeb, also known as Sinai, he encounters a burning bush where God speaks to him and instructs him to return to Egypt to free the Israelites. Then from chapter 7 to chapter 12, we saw this was after Moses returned, after running away from Egypt because he killed somebody and he didn't want Pharaoh to kill him. God asked him to go back to Egypt. And so he went back, and God gave him all the 10 plagues to show to Pharaoh if Pharaoh wouldn't let the people go. So Moses, with the help of his brother, confronts Pharaoh, demanding the release of the Israelites. Pharaoh, of course, refused. As a result, God sends a series of 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt, including turning the Nile into blood, locusts, frogs, and the death of the firstborn. And in chapter 12 as well, that was when we first saw what was called the Passover. The final plague is the death of the firstborn in Egypt to protect the Israelites. God instructs them to mark their doorpost with the blood of a sacrificial lamb, which would signal the angel of death to pass over their homes. This event is commemorated as Passover. So between chapter 12 and chapter 15, after the final plague, when the firstborn of all the Egyptian family was killed by the angel of death, Pharaoh finally relents and the Israelites are set free. They leave Egypt in haste, and God guides them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. They reach the Red Sea, and Moses, with God's help, parts the water, allowing the Israelites to cross safely. So between chapter 15 and chapter 18, that was when they journeyed through the wilderness. The Israelites embarked on a journey through the wilderness, facing challenges such as lack of water and food. God provides them with manna and quail to sustain them. And between chapter 19 and chapter 24, God gave them the law, which is the 10 Commandments. So at Mount Sinai, God gives Moses the 10 Commandments and the law, which will govern the Israelites' behavior as a holy nation. And between chapter 25 to chapter 40, that details the tabernacle where God said he will dwell with his people, and for God to do that, God wanted Moses to create a tabernacle whereby it will become the holy place where God will come down, right, and manifest himself with the people. Okay, so God instructs Moses on the construction of the tabernacle, very detailed instruction, a portable sanctuary where his presence would dwell among the Israelites. So the Israelites, spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness due to disobedience, lack of faith. During this time, Moses continues to lead and guide them. We're just going to watch a quick video, and you can click on the description below to watch this. So, we saw in the snapshots that we've read and the video, we saw who God was to the children of Israelites. So we saw that God was the I am, because one of the things that happened when God appeared to Moses in the burning bush, and Moses asked God that when you asked me to go back to Egypt, and when the people of Israelites in Egypt ask, who sent you? Right? They're going to ask questions. That who sent you? What should I tell them? God said, tell them the I am sent you. Right? God called himself the I am. So that's where, the I am that I am comes from. And that meant that God is God of all things, right? Also, that also meant that God is self-existent, meaning that nobody created God. God created everything, but nobody created God. So God existed by himself. And also, God is our maker, because God saw the pain that the children of Israelites were going through in Egypt, because God said, I heard their cries, and God wanted to go and deliver them from the Egyptian. So God is also an affectionate God, so who is our cry and respond. So when you have a mother and the father have a new baby, and the baby is crying, yeah, 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 right? What do you think the mother and the parents would do? Would they just sit down watching Netflix and, not respond to the baby?
I'll respond to the baby.
They will respond to the baby. They will carry the baby, right? And they will try and
give him milk.
They will try and give him milk or give him food or something, right?
Hey.
To make him stop crying. So exactly the same thing that God does, right? God responds to our cry. So when we cry, God listens and it comes, right? To solve our problems and to help us. God will also send help at the right time. And in this story, we saw that at the right time, after the children of Israel had suffered for years being slaves in Egypt, God sent Moses back to Egypt to rescue them. So God will always send help at the right time. It might not be the time that we want, but God's time is the best time.
Yeah.
So quiz time.
Quiz time.
Question number 1. Who found baby Moses in the basket among the reeds of the Nile River? A, Pharaoh's daughter. B, Moses' sister Miriam. C, a Hebrew shepherd. D, Aaron, Moses' brother. So question number 2. How many plagues did God send upon Egypt to convince Pharaoh to release the Israelites? A, 5. B, 7. C, 9. D, 10. Question number 3. What was the last and most devastating plague that led Pharaoh to finally release the Israelites? A, the plague of locust. B, the plague of boils. C, death of the firstborn. D, plague of darkness. Number 4. What body of water did Moses part to allow the Israelites to escape the pursuing Egyptians? A. The Jordan River. B. The Red Sea. C. The Sea of Galilee. D. The Dead Sea. So how many commandments did God give to Moses on Mount Sinai? A. 5. B. 7. C. 10. D. 15. I swap. Why did God create you? To deliver his message of love and forgiveness. So when Moses went back to Egypt, the people of Israelites at that time they've already given up, really, because they've been praying and asking God to come and save them for a very long time. The more they pray, the harder the punishment or the slavery and the hardship got. I remember even when Moses got there and went to Pharaoh the first time and asked Pharaoh, let the people of Israel go. Pharaoh said, oh, the reason why you're asking me is because you guys are too lazy, right? And it made them work more for less. The Israelites were very, very unhappy with Moses because they thought Moses made their problem even worse. So they were very, very unhappy.
But how come Moses didn't work?
Good question. You're thinking, you're really, really thinking about it. The reason why Moses didn't work was because Moses had already left. I remember Moses left as a prince, right? So they didn't really have power over Moses to get him to go and work. Moses came as like somebody visiting Egypt, right? Because he already left and he spent a number of years.
Because he killed someone.
Because he killed somebody and he ran away. And he spent a number of years outside of Egypt. So when God sent him back, it's like you visiting Egypt, but you're still an Israelite. So because of that, they can't force Moses to work, technically. Okay? But that's a very good question. And why did God create you? Another point is to give hope to the hopeless. So main reason, and we see it here in the snapshots that we've talked about, was Moses. The main assignment that Moses was given was to give hope to the children of Israelites. Remember?
To save them.
To save them and to give them hope. Remember, they've lost hope because they've been praying for years, asking God of their forefathers, the God of Jacob, to help them, to save them from hardship, from slavery, from Pharaoh, and nothing was happening. Nothing happened. For years.
And years. So they were working for years.
Yes.
They were working for years because
it was difficult
to pray.
And God gave them hope by sending Moses back to them to save them.
So they never even got to rest. Did they get to rest or no?
Get to rest.
Yeah, and they forgot.
That's what God promised them, right? God promised them that He was going to take them out of Egypt and He's going to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, meaning a land that when you plant something,
it will just grow.
It will, fantastic, Olimito. It will just grow and the land will produce fantastic food, fantastic fruits, fantastic grain, vegetables, right?
Fantastic life, lovely things.
They're gonna have lovely things, absolutely. So that was a promise
that God was going to make for them.
That God promised them, but they couldn't see that in the middle of hardship. So Moses went back to give them that message of hope because they were hopeless at that time. We've been created to execute God's plan. Okay? What was the plan that God had for the children of Israel?
I think it was to come out of Egypt and go to the promised land.
Yes, that was the plan. Get them out of Egypt to the promised land. Now, getting them out of Egypt, it's a very, very
hard thing
to do. It's like mission impossible. Right? It's like mission impossible. Like, you know, you're asking go-getters to go and save and rescue somebody. Right? And the mission is so difficult that they have to use all the clip-ons, they have to use, you know, every single thing that they have. Every single, not one.
How can they use every single thing?
They have to, because this is mission impossible. Right? They have to use every single thing.
They can't use every single thing.
They have to use at least 10 things. 10.
If they use 10 things,
Can you tell me 10 things that go-getters have?
They have
Everything
steel
else.
giants,
Shield,
steel sticks,
Yeah, okay.
and steel shield,
Yeah.
jumps.
Geoboards.
What else?
Geovac.
Five.
No, I already said steel jumps.
No, that's five.
Geovac.
Geovac,
Geoboard. Geoforce.
No, you already said geoboard.
Force.
I said geoforce.
Okay. Is that up to 10?
Two
No,
more.
6. No, that's...
No,
You can't.
that's up to 11. Look, I got 5 and you got 5 and you got one more.
You just said the same thing. Geovac, Geoshield, Geoforce, Geogiant, Geovac,
Geojump,
Geojump,
geofly,
Geofly, Geodive.
Geodive.
So you guys can't find 10. Okay. We'll
Wait!
stop-
We found 8.
Okay, we'll stop it at that. Now,
No,
think
we
about,
found
hold
lots
on.
of things.
Okay, that's fine. We found 8, right? Now,
Oh, geosuit.
okay, maybe you found 9, but you still can't find 10. So now think about all those things that go-getters have.
Geoboots.
Geoboots.
Okay, you found
Geo.
10 eventually. Now think about all those things that go-getters have to save and rescue.
Geoboard.
And rescue, listen, and rescue, you know, somebody in trouble. Moses had 10 things. And what are those 10 things? What are they called?
The plane.
The plague.
Ooh.
The 10 plagues. That was the plan. That was what God had.
That was the plan to like Pharaoh.
Pharaoh made the
them
Israelites
come
leave
up.
Egypt. 10. So God told Moses, these 10 plagues, you're going to do them one after the other, right? And I know, God told Moses, I know Pharaoh is going to be very, very difficult. He won't let you guys go easy. So Moses did one plague, another plague,
I thought it was.
up to the
I thought it was God who did it.
Yeah, God used Moses. Okay? God used Moses to perform all the plagues, right?
So you say
But the last one,
Was,
was
the baby
the firstborn, right? The first son
of
of
Pharaoh.
every Egyptian family
Oh.
was killed by the angel of death. Okay? Every first male child in every family across all of Egypt died in a
Died.
single night.
because Pharaoh
At the same
killed
time.
them.
Not Pharaoh, the angel of death killed them. The angel of death went across the land, the entire land of Egypt. But the reason why the first son of the Israelites did not die was God had already told them that kill a lamb, right, and use the blood of the lamb
And put it
to
on the
mark
doors.
on your door, so that when the angel comes to the door of the house, when it sees the blood, it will pass over. That was where the word Passover came from, right? Meaning that when the angel sees the blood on the
You know
doorpost,
that
he
you
knows
want
that
back. You want
the
that.
Israelites live in that house, right? And the angel will pass and go to the next house, and went to the next house, to the next house, to the next house, to the next house.
Until he found
A house without
until he found the house of an
Egyptian, and the Egyptians don't believe in God. So they would not put blood on the doorpost.
So the kids will die.
So the last plague was essentially that.
But how did they even die all together at once?
No, it's better.
Yeah, because the angel of death can, it doesn't have to be going door to door. We're just using it as illustration. Listen, don't make noise. The angel of death doesn't. We're just using that as analogy, right? It doesn't really have to go, from door to door. It can do this all at once, right? Well, anyways, all the first male of the Egyptians died in a single night, and there was a lot of cry in the land. Okay, and because of that as well, the children of Israel went to the Egyptians and asked them to borrow them gold, silver, cloth. The Israelites went to the Egyptians to borrow because they were going to go away, right? And they just went to them and said, they will need to sacrifice to their God.
But they need some food.
So they gave them a lot of gold, a lot of silver, and God did that.
The Israelites gave them.
No, the Egyptians gave the Israelites. Right? And God did that to repay them, to repay the Israelites for all the hard work that they've done all these years, and they never got paid. Right? So they just asked the Egyptians that they need.
I thought the Egyptians didn't like them, so he wouldn't.
They didn't like them. True. That's a valid point. They didn't like them. But now think about it. When your first son, died because of
Pharaoh.
the Israelites, and they came to ask you, can we have some gold or some silver or some clothes for our journey? We're leaving, but can you give us just something so that we can use to worship our God? What do you think they would do? Right? They're already grieving, right? And they just want you out of their land. So in a hurry, the Egyptians were not thinking. We're just giving them that. Just take, and get out of our land. We don't want to see you anymore. Just take and get out. We don't want to see you. You've caused us so much pain, right? So they wanted the Israelites gone. So they just gave them everything they asked for, right? And God used that as a way to pay back the Israelites for all these years that they've worked, but they never got paid as slaves, right? So everything was still part of God's plan.
What is slave?
So that slave is people that work and they don't have any right. Right? People make them work and they don't have any right. They just work and they don't get paid at all.
They're just slaves.
Okay, so that's the meaning of slave. Slave is when you don't have any right at all, but your master puts you to work, and the only thing that he will probably give you is just food, but you have no other right, nothing.
Because if he didn't have food, then they wouldn't be able to live for
to
long.
work.
To work.
Essentially.
Because they need food to work.
They need food to be strong to work. Yes. What is your purpose? So to lead our friends and loved ones to all godliness and repentance.
Is that
okay?
There are people that Pharaoh took?
Yep. So one of the things that we ought to do, right, is to tell our friends, tell our loved ones about the power of God, right? And show them the goodness of God, the godliness of God, the righteousness of God through how we live. Because you can't show people by just telling people. You show people by living your way in a certain way. And not deceiving people, not living, showing them something else at school and you're something else in the house. That's deception. You always have to be yourself, your true self, every time. And you have to, how you live, how you interact with people, have to show God through you. Okay, we need to also pray for other people. So Moses interceded in the book of Exodus, we see a lot of instances where Moses prayed for the children of Israelites. When God was angry with them, Moses would pray for them. Moses would stand between God and the people, right? And Moses would just tell God, if you kill these people, have you thought about what other nations will be talking about, right? That they're going to say that you brought them out of Egypt and you killed all of them in the wilderness. That's what people are going to be talking about. The main thing that Moses would do, going back to Jesus being the sacrificial lamb, right? When the people of Israelites sinned in those days, the way Moses would appease God, intercede, was to kill a lamb and make a sacrifice, right, to God. And that sacrifice, again, comes with blood, and God will see that, and God will, will repent of. The word repent is God will stop from punishing them because Moses had made a sacrifice. And that's what happens to us now after Jesus had died for us, right? When we sin, when we accept Jesus as our Lord and our Savior, automatically we become sons and daughters of God. But when we sin, right, Jesus is making sacrifice for us, because the blood of Jesus is always making sacrifice. It's always telling God that we're not perfect, but He has saved us. We're not perfect, but He has saved us. And when God sees the blood, when God remembers what Jesus did on the cross of Calvary, and Jesus dying and shedding His blood and His body broken for us, right? So it's a mirror image of what we saw in Exodus and what Jesus did in the New Testament. We also need to show people God's faith and obedience, and we saw this throughout the Exodus, how Moses demonstrated faith, and to the people of Israelite by the first big one that they saw was when they got to the Red Sea, and all of a sudden Pharaoh changed his mind and was coming with his chariots and his horsemen, with swords and javelin, and he was going to let them go, but he just changed his mind that no, I'm not going to let you go. I want you guys back as slaves in Egypt. And Pharaoh was on the other side. The children of Israel were in the middle, and the Red Sea on the other side. And Moses was like, everybody was scared. And Moses was telling God, what's going to happen now? Are we going to all die? Right? And God said, what are you waiting for? Right? Go through the Red Sea. Right? And Moses used the staff. Remember, that staff was the staff that he used at the beginning. That staff turned into snake and hit all the snake of the Egyptian sorcerers up. So that staff, Moses used that staff to part the Red Sea, right? Divide the Red Sea into two. Then you have like a wall on the right hand and wall on and they walked on a dry land through the Red Sea. Okay, so that is faith that nobody had seen up to that point. That, wow, so if you believe in God, this kind of miracles can happen. And obedience, right, is Moses doing everything that God tells him to do, right? And this is one of the obedience is one of the key issues that God had with the children of Israelite, because God will tell them to do something. God will give them laws and instructions, right? And what do? They do the opposite of it. So the opposite of obedience is disobedience, right? And it's very simple. Your parent asks you to do something, you do the opposite of that thing, you've disobeyed. You've not obeyed, right? So God doesn't like that at all. And this is why we're always kind of tell you guys that when you're given simple instruction, you listen and do it. Because when somebody gives you an instruction, that instruction is meant for your own good most times, right? If you're told that, oh, you're running around, there's water on the floor, and that person knows, the adult knows that there's water on the floor, you can easily hurt yourself, and they're asking you, stop running around, and you kept on running around. If you fall down and hurt yourself, who gets hurt?
You.
Is it the person that told you not to, to stop running around that will get hurt? So when you obey, you're doing yourself good, right? When God told the children of Israelites, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, right?
What are you doing?
Well, when God tells them that don't worship other gods, when God, tells them, gave them 10 commandments, did God give them 10 commandments for the benefit of God? No. God gave them 10 commandments for their own benefit. Not for God's benefit, but for their own benefit. But if you disobey the 10 commandments, who gets hurt in the process?
Them.
Them, not God. Okay?
God told them to stop what they would do, but they didn't listen and they get hurt.
That is the key thing you have to take. You guys have to take away from this. When there are rules set for you to do something and stick to those rules are usually meant for you, for your own good.
So you
right?
don't get hurt.
So something bad doesn't happen
to you.
Okay? And that's why you have to obey. But you have to understand, what that instruction is, right? You just don't blindly, do things that people tell you to do. You have to understand, what the instruction is and why that instruction is, is in place. Understood? Question number 6. In the wilderness, what miraculous food did God provide for the Israelites to eat? A, manna. B, meat. C, bread. D, fish. Question number 7. How long did Moses stay in Mount Sinai to receive the law from God? A, 3 days. B, 7 days. C, 40 days and 40 nights. D, 100 days. Number 8. What did God provide for the Israelites in the wilderness to drink when they were thirsty? A, water from a rock. B, wine. C, milk. D, honey. Number 9. How many years did the Israelites wander in the wilderness before entering the promised land? A, 20 years. B, 30 years. C, 40 years. D, 50 years. Number 10. Who succeeded Moses as the leader of the Israelites? A, Joshua. B, Aaron. C, Miriam. And D, Caleb. Okay, Olumito, this is tough for you,
It's
right?
only C that I got. It's only 7 that I got.
So it's manna. God gave them manna in the wilderness. So the financial principles we can learn from Exodus is to plan and budget for future needs. And we saw that, especially when they were about to leave Egypt. Like I said before, the Israelites went to the Egyptians and asked them for, things that they can, like gold, clothes and stuff like that. To their surprise, the Egyptians gave them a lot of things because they just wanted them out of Egypt. Turned out that they actually needed to use those things that they got from Egypt when they were in the wilderness and when they got to the promised land, because they used those gold, that they got. They use all these things. They use it to build the tent, the ark, to build a lot of things, and they use it for things that they were not supposed to even use it for, like to build a golden calf that they worshipped, and God was angry about that. So they had so many things that they got from Egypt. God told them specifically, take what you need or what you can eat for the day. right?
Don't save any.
And don't leave any for the next day. Okay, so God was specific about that. That just take what you need for the day and don't save any. Okay, so God had already planned everything when it comes to their food. God's already planned everything for them. They don't need to worry about food. But God did tell them that this manna is only going to last for 40 years.
40 years.
Well, as long as they were in the wilderness, they're going to have the manna.
It's
Well,
40 years and not.
It's a long time, yeah. As soon as they got out of the wilderness and they got to the promised land, God told them, the manna is going to stop, then you're going to start working and farming and tilling the ground and doing work to make money, to provide food for your family, right? Because that was how God planned it. So the manna was not going to be there forever. We also need to avoid being greedy. And we saw that greedy is when you wanted too much for yourself and yourself alone. You're not thinking of other people, or you're not thinking of the consequences of what you're trying to get.
So you just want it all for yourself?
You just want everything for yourself, right? You see things,
See that?
you just want to take it, for yourself. You're not thinking that, that thing might actually belong to somebody else. Or you're not thinking about, oh, you have so much, but why don't you give to other people and share, right?
Not all of it.
Not take all of it. We see, the greediness of the children of Israelites, especially in the wilderness, when, again, the manna, God asked them, take all you need for the day, but they don't listen. They take more than they needed, right? And what happens? The manna will rot, and there will be maggots coming out of it. And God was angry with them about that as well. Some people will still do it and repeat that thing again and again and again and again. So we also have to be thankful for what, we're given. Then give with a generous heart. Okay, the children of Israelites, when Moses and Joshua and all these prophets asked them to give for building the temple or contributing things that they need, and they just give so much because they just wanted to give to God. Right, and we have to have that attitude as well, where we're giving, but we have to give out of our abundance. We have to give out of what we have. You don't, go and borrow to give people, right? You give out of what you have. You understand? You don't go and, borrow from your friend, then you give what you've borrowed to somebody else. No.
That didn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense. And God doesn't want us to do that either.
If you
So-
don't have any money, you just work.
You just don't give because you don't have. So in conclusion, in Exodus, we see God's divine plan to rescue his people by waiting for the right time for Moses to be old enough to go back to Egypt and to rescue the children of Israelites. And Moses relied on God, knowing his ability. He wasn't even prepared because he thought he wasn't supposed to be the one that should go, because he said, oh, he stammers, that he cannot speak properly.
What?
Because he stammers, Moses couldn't talk properly. So he said that, why would you send me to Pharaoh? I cannot even talk properly. Right? And God said, don't worry, right? I don't really care about how you talk. I care about your heart, but your brother will talk for you. And his brother is Aaron. So God used Aaron to talk, right? To present, like you call it today. Present in front of Pharaoh. But Moses was the one that God gave the vision.
So Aaron was with Moses.
It was with Moses all the time. Yeah.
So,
Aaron was like the second
who's
in
Aaron?
command. Aaron is Moses' brother.
Aaron.
Yes.
Aaron,
Call it Aaron or Aaron.
Aaron was Moses' brother.
Moses became God's friend, and we saw this throughout Exodus, where Moses was so close to God and he used to talk to God to the point where he would, talk for days with God, and his face would be shining like he was an angel. Right? So Moses was very, very close to God. And
All the time.
all the time. He was like a friend of God, because God trusted him so much. And we see that as well, how Moses was able to be so confident in asking God not to, do something to the Israelites, or not to punish them. Moses would always stand in the gap in the middle between the Israelites and God, and he would try to beg God and appease God, and try to reason with God. So Moses, was God's friend in that regard.
He wanted to
And we see
calm down.
the 40 years miracle. And what's the 40 years miracle?
40 years miracle
Yeah,
was there's the manna.
the manna.
Is that-
That's right.
Is that dirt?
So 40 years miracle. You can imagine, for 40 years wandering in the wilderness, and you're getting food dropping from heaven. That's amazing
No.
when you think about it,
Nine.
right?
Nine.
That's God promised them He was going to feed them throughout the wilderness when they journeyed into the promised land.
La.
And God fulfilled His promise,
Two.
right? And even when they were sinning, right, God still gave them food. God did not stop giving them food to eat. That's how God, God is faithful.
God.
Then we saw again the act of, discipleship. And this probably, we've not really mentioned it, how Moses discipled Joshua. Because Joshua, remember in the quiz, we asked that who succeeded Moses? Who was the leader after Moses?
What
It was
does
Joshua.
succeeded mean?
It was succeed is when somebody, you train somebody to come to lead after you're gone, right? So like in kingdoms, you usually have, the son or the daughter of the king, becoming the king after, the king has passed. Just like the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, when she passed away, who became king? Charles became king. So essentially, Charles succeeded, right, Queen Elizabeth. So that's what he meant. So the act of discipleship. So Joshua succeeded Moses, and Joshua was able to do that because Moses had shown him a lot of things. We see how Moses trained Joshua up to become the next leader, and we see that as well in the New Testament, where Jesus had 12 disciples, train them, show them, his ways, show them how to do miracles, show them God's, promises.
So
And
God
when
had-
Jesus left,
So
the
God
disciples took over.
So God had like a lot of prophets. So a lot of prophets.
Yeah, in the Old Testament, there were prophets after prophets, and one prophet will train another prophet after them, or God will raise another prophet up. And the promise, right, was fulfilled in Exodus, where God promised them that they're going to go leave Egypt, and they're going to go to the promised land, and God fulfilled that promise throughout the book of Exodus. Okay, and that's it.